Hi, and welcome to the Wise Women's Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Angela Counsel. And with a background as a naturopath, I thought I knew exactly what happened to women when they reached menopause until I experienced it myself. I then realized that there was so much more to this time of life than what was written in the textbooks. I decided it was time to bring this stage of life out of the closet and to have some open and honest conversations with women who are going through the same journey. Wise Women's Conversation has been created to share information and experiences from other wise women in our community. Sit back and listen to the wise women speak. Hi, and welcome back to this week's episode of Wise Women's Conversations. It's Angela here with another solo episode. And this week, I thought I would share a little bit about my story, why I do what I do, because I know not all of you are probably really aware of my background if you've only come to find out about me through this podcast recently. So let's go back to the beginning. Well, not right back at the beginning. I am a naturopath. I'm also trained in a kinesiology technique called Lifeline Technique, which helps heal emotional wounds and clear those negative beliefs that are holding you back. And I'm also a accredited PH 360 health coach. So, but what does all of that mean? My story, I used to work in corporate. I was in corporate for many, many years. For about 20 years, I was in corporate, and I worked for the Commonwealth Bank, and then I was a consulting project manager. And I kind of gave it all up, gave up working the stressful life, gave up the money, and there was a lot of money that I was earning at the time, and I gave it all up to become a naturopath. And about 17 years ago, after I did my studies, had a couple of children, I qualified as a naturopath. And I went out and I started working with different groups of women. And primarily when I first started, I was working with new mums, so mums of newborn babies, so young, very young children. And over the years, I was working with women who had kids at school, and it just kind of kept evolving as my client base was getting older. I was then working with older women, and now I work with women who are going through perimenopause and menopause. Now, I can remember right back in my early days of being in practice that when I would get an older woman come in, and they were, coming to me with different health issues, things to do with thyroid, autoimmune disease. I really, at that stage, really didn't understand what the concept of perimenopause was. I had a very limited knowledge about what menopause was. I kind of really knew about hot flushes, period stopping, a little bit of weight gain. We really weren't taught a lot about menopause when I was studying. So I was very limited in what I understood what was happening to these women who are in their late 40s, early 50s and beyond. And I didn't realize the impact that the hormones, particularly the reproductive hormones, was having on these women as they were presenting to me with all these different symptoms and conditions. And then when I started to move into this stage of life, I really didn't recognize it in myself. I didn't know what was going on. See, I was an older mum. I didn't have my first child until I was 40, and I had my second at 43. And I was breastfeeding until I was about 45, 46. And then as I stopped breastfeeding, I have to say at that stage, my menstrual cycle was actually pretty spot on. It was the first time in for as long as I could remember that I was on 28 days, not really heavy bleeding. I had no symptoms before. Basically, my period would just come. It generally would come. Well, it was a bit of a surprise if I wasn't tracking where we were up to, and it would just happen. It was over in about 4 days, and that was it. It was pretty much, very, very uneventful, which was totally different to what it was like before I had children. I had fibroids. I had very heavy bleeding. I had incredible pain every month. It was completely debilitating. But pregnancy has a way of resetting a lot of hormones. Plus, I had some large fibroids removed before I fell pregnant the first time. But then, life was just going along. And then I really started to notice that my moods were shifting a bit. And I just thought that was part of, being a mum of younger children and, being tired, running a business, seeing clients, being really stressed and, burning myself out. But now as I look back to it, I realized that part of what was going on was actually the shift in my hormones. I was in perimenopause, and my hormones were shifting. Now, I didn't know a lot, as I said, I didn't know a lot about menopause. We weren't taught a lot about it when I was studying. And my mother went through menopause when I was very, very young. She had a full hysterectomy at 24. So I was only about 2 at that stage. So she would have gone through menopause then. So I had no concept of what menopause was about. I knew that our period stopped. As I said, and, people spoke about hot flushes, and I didn't really know a great deal about it. So when it came for me, I was a little bit surprised. I was looking forward to not having periods, only because I'd had a lot of issues before falling pregnant. Mind you, I kind of, it wasn't really on my radar once after my second child, because things just seemed to go along pretty easily. And then my main thing that I started to notice, occasionally I was getting a little bit hot, and I'm thinking, oh, are these hot flushes? And I didn't have a lot. I mean, they weren't debilitating. And I know some women, hot flushes can be really debilitating. But I was getting hot flushes every so often. When I used to do presentations and speak, sometimes I would notice that I would start to heat up from inside, and by the time I'd finish, I'd be really, really sweaty, even though I didn't think I was nervous because I love speaking. And then over time, I started to develop a little bit of joint pain. In particular, I was having issues with my hip. I found out I had osteoarthritis. So it was particularly bad in one hip, and I was in lots of pain. I was trying to get it fixed. I was seeing chiropractors. I had twist in my pelvis. And there was a lot of stuff going on for me physically in joints. I had a lot of joint issues. So, I was taking some herbs to help with that. Then I took a few herbs to help with the hot flushes. Then my sleep started to change, and I was in pain nearly every single night. So incredible pain at nighttime, and I couldn't sleep. So when I wasn't sleeping, then I'd be waking up and I'd be tired. Then I'd make not so great choices with my food. And I still really hadn't, at this stage, I really kind of clicked into that this had anything to do with my reproductive hormones. I really didn't have any thought that that's what was going on. And then when it all kind of came to a head, and I think I was probably around about 50. I know that when it happened, it was when my youngest daughter finished primary school. It was coming up to the week before her last week at primary school, and I had a really minor car accident, very, very minor car accident, minimal. No, it was just a tiny little ding. And then I came home, and all of a sudden, I was on the floor. I was in tears. I kind of thought, what the hell is going on with me? I can't concentrate. I'm so foggy headed. All this stuff, it just all came, and I was just an absolute mess. And then for the next few days, I honestly, I could hardly move. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so tired. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't do anything. I knew that I had to be able to get up, and I had to be able to face the world for my daughter's final end of year concert. And so I managed to get out and kind of go and front the world and put everything inside. And I did that. And then once she did her final day of school, she came home, and then it was school holidays for the next 6 weeks. And basically I could do nothing. I could do very, very little. I actually canceled all my clients. I didn't take on any new clients for 6 weeks. I sat, I couldn't think. I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on. I had noticed that my period had got a little bit more erratic. I wasn't as regular, so I was skipping periods, but I still hadn't clicked what was going on. And then after about the 6 weeks, the kids went back to school. I was feeling a little bit better because I'd had a bit of rest, but I had lost direction. I'd lost direction in my business. I didn't know what I wanted to be doing. My kids really didn't need me as much now. They were both at high school, very independent. I didn't know who I was. And then also we then had some kind of really, really big scary news in that my husband then was diagnosed with melanoma. And in a way, then I was a little bit grateful that I'd kind of put my business on hold, because then I had to support him as we went through that journey. And, and my husband still has melanoma, and it's still a journey that's still going on. And, but I kind of, there was one day when my husband was hospital. He was in hospital for 2 months, and he had 5 operations because there kept being complications, and he was in and out of ICU. And I was very much caught up in the drama of what was going on, and what's going to happen and all of this. And one day I just woke up and went, I actually know it's time for me to stop. This is time for me to really regroup and have a look at what's going on, and use all of the tools that I have. Use the stuff I have with the Lifeline technique. Use everything that I'd done with my mentors, with mindset work, spiritual work. I read a book by Gabby Bernstein called The Universe Has Got Your Back. And I went, okay. And it just came at the right time. It's like, okay, now it's time to stop and just trust that everything is going to be okay. And I stepped back from the drama of all that was going on with my husband. It didn't mean that I wasn't still involved, but I stepped away from the drama of it, that it was the worst thing in the world, and all the negatives, and all the stuff that was consuming me, and how I had to be there for everyone. And I just stopped, and then I picked my journal up again, and I started to write. Now, I hadn't been journaling in a very long time, and I just started to write. And as I wrote and cleared all of this stuff, and I did my Lifeline sessions, I started to come back into who I was, and started to really connect back to the essence of who I was. And then as time went by, I started to realize that I was actually going through a menopausal transition, and I really wanted to understand more about what was going on, because what was happening to me was not what I expected. It's not what I was taught about menopause, and it was not what I expected. And then I started to speak to other women, and found out that, apart from obviously what was going on with my husband, other women were going through similar things. They were feeling the same things. And then I started to notice that, on Facebook, someone would make these posts, women would make posts about, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm feeling lost. What's all of this? Is this, this menopause stuff? And all these women were making comments, and I'm going, hang on a minute. This is not just me. This is happening to everybody. What's happening? And I started to really go, look, women need to know what's happening. We need to be sharing this information. So I did a lot more research. I spoke to a lot more women. And I went back into evolution, mythology, looked at Greek mythology, looked at different cultures around the world, around how different women experience this stage of life. I already knew about, in mythology, we had the maid and the mother and the crone. I knew that I didn't really identify with being the crone, because to me, the crone was an old woman. I didn't see myself as being an old woman. And then I realized that there was a real gap in our understanding of this stage of life for women, and what we now call mid-stage of life. Because in the past, we didn't live as long as what we do now. Even in the last, I think I heard the other day, in the last 50 years, our life expectancy has grown about 20 years or so. In the last generation, it may be that our life expectancy has increased about 20 years. So if we go back a couple of generations, life expectancy for women wasn't much past 50 or 60. We had children a lot younger. We became grandmothers a lot younger, and then we were dying a lot younger. So the way that we're living our life now, where women are living, an average age, I think now for women is 88, so late 80s. So that's the average. So many women are living past that. So, and it's new. We also live different lives now. Most women are still participating in the workforce. We raise our children, we work, we run businesses. We're not the way we were a couple of generations ago when women solely raised a family and that was their only responsibility. Very few women went out to work, and they weren't, in some instances, they weren't allowed to work, and they certainly weren't expected to work. And then we go back even further generations of that, women lived in villages, so that, we all lived in villages. And so women always came together, and children were raised by a village, not necessarily by single families, which is how we raise our children today. So life has changed. And I realize that many women are very confused because we have got an evolutionary thing happening in that our bodies are changing because of our age, because of, our shift in hormones. We're running out of eggs, so we're no longer reproductive. But we are not now at the end of our lives. We're actually in the middle of our lives. So, and that is different because we don't know how to deal with that. So I did lots more work in this area and spoke to a lot more women and learned what was going on. And that's why I do what I do today. And one of the words that I was using quite a lot when we very first started was the word marga. And marga was a word that came to me. It actually came to me in a dream, and then someone said it to me and said that this was an archetype. Someone else said that it came to her in a dream. So I used the word marga, and then one of my clients or a friend of mine said, "Oh, do you know that marga means wise woman in Sicilian?" So I knew that marga was a word to be using. And I used marga to describe this time of life, this mid-stage of life, this time of life when women step into their wisdom. And I was using it for quite some time. And I had a magazine called the Marga Woman Magazine, and I created a community called the Marga Woman Project. But I have to say that I stepped back from using that term for a little while, and I'm actually a little bit ashamed of what I did, but I'm going to share with you what I did. Donald Trump came along, and Donald Trump had a slogan called MAGA, which meant Make America Great Again. And so in America, MAGA was associated with Donald Trump. And when I put my magazine out, whilst I publish here in Australia, it got picked up by women over in America. And I got a lot of flack because they were seeing that I was a Donald Trump supporter. Now, I, obviously coming from Australia, had very little knowledge of the goings on of the American politics. Yes, I knew about Donald Trump, but I didn't at that stage know that he had coined this slogan, Make America Great Again, and that people were being known as MAGA women. I learned that. And so I kind of backed back from using that word. And I'm actually sorry that I did. I will be using the word MAGA again. I am proud to be a MAGA woman because MAGA woman means wise woman. So you will be hearing the term MAGA woman. It's an archetype. It's a state of being. It's something that we step into, and I will be using that a little bit more rather than just wise women. The name of this podcast, Wise Women's Conversations. Originally, I was going to call it MAGA Women Conversations, but I kind of stopped doing that. So moving on. So yes, so this is why I do what I do. And along the way, as I've been doing all of this, I've kind of been going, okay, so how can I help women get through this stage of life with ease? So I looked at what I knew as a naturopath. and what's the right diet for women? What do we need to be doing when it comes to diet? Because I knew that diet and lifestyle and mindset and belief systems all played a role, because when I was looking at how women experienced menopause around the world, I saw that there were some cultures that really didn't even have a word for menopause. There are other cultures that had beautiful words. In Japan, they have a word which means second spring. And here in the Western world, we really didn't have an identity around menopause, and we didn't have, we didn't have commonalities. And so as I went and I looked, and I said, well, okay, so what's the right diet for a woman in menopause? Is it keto? Is it paleo? Is it vegetarian? Is it vegan? What is it? And I found that as I looked at different cultures, that they all ate differently. Then I spoke to women and found out, for those who were going through, who basically told me that they had very little issues with menopause and that they went through that stage of life with ease, I found out what they were having. They were all eating different diets as well. I'm going, okay, so there's no commonality when it comes to diet. What about lifestyle? And I was getting really stuck as to, well, what do I recommend to my clients? And, there were the basics. Obviously, it was like, making sure that you've got good quality plants in your diet. If you're eating meat, that it's good quality meat, that we don't have, don't eat processed foods. So eating whole foods, that bit I knew, but I was going, well, what's the specific diet? And then I was listening to another naturopath speak about something called personalized health. And that really interested me. And I wanted to know a little bit more about personalized health. And at the time, I just I did a little bit of research and I just let it go, because that was around the time that my husband got sick. And so I kind of let it go. And I didn't really follow it too much. And then about 18 months or so ago, I thought, well, I'm going to find out a little bit more about what this personalized health is. How can we personalize health for individuals? Because I really understood that. In the past, I'd used the blood type diet and I'd been personalizing based on people's blood type, but I knew there was more to it. So then I did the training. I found out about personalized health. And the name of the system that I use is called PH 360. So personalized health, and 360 is basically, it says that everyone sits somewhere on a 360-degree circle, and we personalize based on where people sit. And that's when I realized that trying to come up with a single diet that works for women going through menopause or through perimenopause was never going to work, because every woman was different. So based on their genetics, based on what we call epigenetics, which is lifestyle, environment, and everything that happens to you and the decisions you make in your body. So based on those two factors determines what is the right diet for you. It also determines the right type of exercise you should be doing, the amount of sleep that you need, all of these things. Once we know who you are and where you are in your hormonal cycle, we can then design the right type of diet for you. So that was like the missing piece to what I was looking for when it came to offering a complete solution to my clients and getting great results. Because no longer was I saying everyone should be on a keto diet and some women going really well and other women not so well. And it was like, as I said, it was the missing piece. So once I had that piece and I had all the other information, so I had the knowledge that I had around hormones, and I'm still learning, and there's a lot. Luckily, there is more research being done on women in menopause. There's not a lot, but there's a bit more being done, so I keep an eye on that. Plus, I've also really spent a lot of time looking at how women are treated in the medical system, how many of them are dismissed with the symptoms that they come up with. So I've really immersed myself in the last probably 5 years in this space, because I not only wanted my experience that I could share, I actually wanted to understand other women's experiences as well, so that we could start talking about this. And that's my main aim, is to be talking about this, to not make it a scary time of life, to give women the knowledge, to allow them to understand what's happening to their body. And once they understand what's happening to their body, then they can make different choices. menopause or perimenopause is not a medical condition. It doesn't require medication. The symptoms that many women are experiencing at this time of life, and there are symptoms that are associated with perimenopause or associated with menopause. They are not menopausal symptoms. And that's one of the things I really want to make clear, that menopause is a stage of life. The symptoms that many women experience are common symptoms. They are not normal symptoms. It is not normal for you to be experiencing different symptoms. If it was normal, everybody would be doing it, and not everybody is experiencing the same symptoms. So it's not normal, it is common. And there are some women who are not experiencing any symptoms. And one thing that I started to realize as I was doing a lot of this research and as I was learning more, is that most of the symptoms that women experience are not caused by the shift in hormones. They are triggered by the shift in hormones. The cause has already happened. The cause is not eating properly. The cause is not looking after yourself. The cause is high levels of stress. The cause is a liver that's not working properly. The cause is an immune system that's not working. But what triggers it is the shift in hormones, because our reproductive hormones, in particular estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, are very, very protective. And as those hormones start to drop, we lose the protection. So then we start to experience the symptoms. The problem was going on beforehand. It's just you had like this cloak over the top of you that was protecting you. And once that protection is gone, now the symptoms start to come up. And that's why I now realize why, when I was in the past, women were coming to me in their 40s with all of these different symptoms, conditions, and all of that, because they would no longer had the protection of, in particular, estrogen. Estrogen is very, very protective. And progesterone, the protection is a lot to do with our moods. And so as progesterone goes down, we start to find that we feel a little, we can feel depressed, we can feel anxious, irritable. So that's the loss of the progesterone. And then when we lose our mojo and we lose our motivation, that's actually our loss of testosterone. So it's not the loss of the hormone that's causing the problem, it's what triggers it. And I hope that makes sense. So it is natural for us to have a drop in hormones because we are no longer producing eggs every month. We don't need to have this high level of hormone. It's no longer required. But we do need to address what's going on in our lives. We do need to address the fact that we haven't been looking after ourselves the way we should have for the 30 odd years beforehand, because we've been giving to everybody else. We've been looking after everybody else and we haven't been looking after ourselves. So to really address what's going on, we need to go back to that cause. We need to go back to, let's look at the food you're eating. Let's look at how you're looking after yourself. Let's look at your lifestyle. Let's look at the way you move. And we do need to make some changes, because what we needed when we were, from the time we were had mid-teens to our mid-40s, when we're in our reproductive stage of life, we don't need the same things, because we are no longer having to support producing an egg every month or everything that goes with that. So we don't need to be eating as much. We don't need to be moving the same way. We don't need to be eating the same type of foods. There is a shift. And this is where I find personalized health is so great, because when the personalized health profile shifts, depends on where you are, depending on your age, depending on what's going on with your hormones. It continues to change. And what you would have been ideal for you to eat in your 30s is not the same as what is ideal for you to eat in your 50s. And actually, in fact, it changes with the seasons. What you eat in winter is not the same as what you eat in summer. It changes in the hemispheres. What women require in the southern hemisphere is not the same as what women require in the northern hemisphere. It changes. It depends. It's all personalized, and that's what I love about personalized health is really understanding your genetics and your epigenetics, your environment, your lifestyle, and all of that. So once I kind of had all of this, I had the knowledge that I had from being a naturopath, everything I'd learned about hormones and menopause, what I knew about their belief systems and wounds that come from my training as a lifeline practitioner, a kinesiologist, and then the personalized health. Then I realized, well, I had a complete solution that I could offer women. It's like, it's not just looking at one thing. We could actually look at a woman as a whole. And I had a complete solution. We looked at you physically, we looked at you emotionally, we looked at you spiritually. And I always I like to work in a group, because then we get the group support. And so then I created what I now call the Embrace program. And Embrace is about embracing who you are on a physical level, on an emotional level, and on a spiritual level. It's about embracing the next stage of your life. It's about embracing the wisdom and stepping into your role as a wise woman or a Maga woman, because this is your time to shine. You have given of yourself to everybody else for the first half of your life. This is your time now to step into who you are and to own who you are and to make decisions that are for you, not for others. And that is why, as I said, I created the Embrace program to support women through this stage of life. And I really love doing this work now. And I really love the fact, I actually love seeing women blossom. I love seeing women not only, they lose weight, their symptoms go, but really own who they are. I just really, really love seeing that. I love seeing the joy in women as they realize that they actually have choices and that they can do what they want to do, that they can live what they, the life they choose to. And for some women, this can be a tough time of life. I know that it's a tough time of life, but that's why I created this program where we can work together as a community, as a group, to support each other while still working on what's going for you personally. Because Embrace program has the personal side of things, where I provide you with the personal support and give you a personalized health plan. But then as a community, we support each other and we come together and, get questions answered, give each other encouragement. Plus I do group healings using the lifeline technique. We heal what's going on with us. We heal our own personal wounds, and we heal the wounds of the world that has the beliefs of the world that have said that women have no value once they get to a certain age. We're creating change, and that's what the Embrace program is all about. It's about creating change. So I thought I'd spend, I'm not sure how long I've spent so far sharing with you that this is who I am and what I do. And just before I go, I will let you know that the next round of the Embrace program kicks off very shortly. If you are interested in finding out a little bit more about what Embrace is, simply pop over to the webpage, which is bit.ly/embrace, EMBRACE -online, ONLINE. And that's all in small letters. If you go to that website, there's lots of information there that shares with you what the Embrace program is all about. And also, if you're not aware, I do have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, where women in the perimenopause and menopause stage of life come in and we have conversations. I do live videos over there regularly. Come over there, and that's called Thrive in Menopause. So please, if you're not already a member of Thrive in Menopause, just put Thrive in Menopause in the search in Facebook. You will find us. Come over. There are a couple of questions that you need to answer. Answer the questions, and then I'll let you in and join in the conversation and meet other women who are going through this journey with you, and share your wisdom. If you've got wisdom to share, please do so. It is a no promotional group, so please don't go in there and spam the group about your products or your business or anything, but you can share your wisdom with other women, or just get your questions answered. So that's it from me today. Hopefully now you know a little bit more about who I am and what I do and why I do what I do and why it's so important for me to build this community of women who support each other and who are going to make a difference in the world. We need to share this information out. We need the women who are coming behind us to know that this does not have to be a tough time of life. This is the time when we step into our wisdom. So that's it from me today. From my heart to yours, have a fantastic week. Infinite love and gratitude. Bye for now.